Hello, everyone. I'm Lucia Goodlow. I'm a default student here at the Oxford Internet Institute, and I'm coordinating the OII Elections Initiative, which aims to cover the digital aspects of some key elections in 2024, and which will span a variety of regional contexts and political systems. To everyone online and in the room, welcome to the first event of this initiative, which is called Zooming In on the Digital Aspects of the Indonesian Election. We're delighted to have Dr. Rizal Shadiq, Di Lu, and Justin Young with us today to discuss how digital technologies can impact electoral campaigns, political participations, and elections. Dr. Rizal Shadiq, who's joining us online, is an assistant professor in development economics at Leiden University Institute for Area Studies in the Netherlands. His current research explores political connections in developing countries, religious intolerance, and democratic vulnerabilities, particularly in Indonesia. Today, we will talk about the background of the Indonesian elections. Di Lu is a default student at the OII. Her doctoral research focuses on algorithmic content moderation and the legitimacy of platformized content governance in South and Southeast Asia, and she tries to understand how underground insights can be mobilized into governing digital platforms and borderline content. Today, she will share her insights on political content governance in Indonesia. Justin Young is an MSc student here at the OII. His research interests address questions on topics such as collective intelligence, AI in journalism, and critical data study. And he is currently an affiliated member of the Leiden Humanities AI and NLP Lab. He will talk about an open access multimodal dataset for the Indonesian election. Each speaker will give a 10-minute presentation, followed by a discussion at the end. If you're joining us online, please put your questions into the Q&A box, and those in the room, save your questions until the end, and we will answer them after the talk. For your awareness, this event is being recorded and will be posted on our website following the event. It's great to have you all here. Dr. Rizal Shadiq, I'll now hand over to you.
Thank you for the very nice introductions. I think I'm going to share my screen. I hope it works. All right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, thanks for the opportunity to talk in this forums. I think this is kind of like joint work between I and Justin, and in my part, I'm going to talk about maybe a little bit about this, background, socioeconomic background on the latest election in 2024, and Justin is probably going to talk about more technical things that we've done here in Leiden. As you know that this is Indonesia, quite big actually. Let's start with the location information. That if you look at that, it's actually quite big countries in terms of geographic population and size. But this is the most interesting thing is going to be happening next week in Indonesia. There's going to be a very massive general election on the Valentine's Day 2024, when there are 250 million registered voters and about 300,000 aspiring politician candidates of 17 political parties are running for some around 20,000 political seats on the Valentine's Day 2024. So this is a really big election. It's going to be happening at once, so each voters will go to the polling booth to vote for at least 5 elections. The district parliament members, provincial parliament members, national parliament members, senators, and presidents and vice presidency. So it's quite impressive if you come to think about it, and maybe also a kind of like logistical nightmare if you come to think that Indonesia is such a huge and vast country. We were going to work later on, and we're actually in our project in Leiden, we were working on how to deal with. We're trying to look at these 300,000 candidates profile and see whether what is actually makes them elected or not elected. But that's going to be the next discussion. The most watched game in this next week election is the presidential election. There are 3 pairs of running candidates. The first one is Anies Baswedan and Muhaimin Iskandar. Number 2 is Prabowo Subianto and Gibran Rakabumi. The third one is Ganjar Pranowo and Mahfud MD. It's not really easy to pin down or point it out what is the sort of like ideological orientations or even vote base in Indonesian politics. But loosely speaking, candidates number ones seems to cater the conservative Muslims, but also urban middle class voters. Number 2 is a kind of like mixed bag of the old establishment supporters, populists, and significant numbers of Joko Widodo, the incumbent president followers. Number 3, Ganjar and Mahmud tends to cater the nationalists and less conservative Muslims. This is kind of like a brief, loosely speaking, the vote base of the 3 running presidential election in Indonesia. At the moment, this is the recent score. The latest survey that I got here, Prabowo Subianto, the number 2, seems to be leading in the poll. 46%, 46.4% of the voters. They might predicted to get the number, while Ganjar and Anies Baswedan seems to be around 22 and 20%. This is actually in line on what you probably see on the economists, which seems to be their actual average of several surveys results in Indonesia that tells you more or less the same numbers about that. So it's a very interesting thing. If you look at that thing, there are a significant increase for the Prabowo electability since October 2023. There's some things to do with the implicit endorsement from Joko Widodo to Prabowo Subianto. In terms of the political parties, if you look at the political parties election for the national parliament elections, then it seems to me the PDIP, which is actually the core party for candidate number 3, Ganjar Pranowo and Mahfud, are leading the game by 20%, followed by Gerindra, which is the political parties of Prabowo Subianto, the number 2. Golkar is also in number 2 as well. So this is pretty much a kind of latest scores on the race of the election in Indonesia. If you can see that here, the PDIP, the leading party, seems to have a declining trend of support. It goes all the way from 26% by the mid of 2000 last years, but now moving into 20%. So this is kind of the pattern. We're following the election surveys coming from the indicator survey, one of the I think one of the best of the survey political surveys in Indonesia. So there's a brief games that we're observing. Why is that, this 2024 election is important? I think this is a critical stress test for the Indonesia as a young predominantly Muslim democracy. And it's also part of maybe, a critical democracy stress test all over the world, part of this, these years, there's a lot of elections going on in many countries. And there are 2 things that might actually quite puzzling. Actually, a significant part of Indonesian citizens think that, democracy is still the best government system. So people believe in democracy. But yet, despite a strong support, lately, there has been like democratic decline in terms of, continued mainstreaming and legitimation of conservatives and anti-pluralistic brand of political Islam. And in particular, is actually the partisans' manipulation of key institutions of states, right? And the increasingly open repression and disempowerment of political opposition. This has been actually indicated as early as 2018, right? But things are getting really alarmingly worse in the last 3 months or so done by the elites. It's actually marked by recent political maneuverings by at the high level constitutional courts to circumvent candidates' age limit to allow young Gibran Rakabumi, the son of the incumbent Joko Widodo, to run the vice presidency for Joko Widodo previous to election rival Prabowo Nole. This is kind of like very interesting thing to look at. It's a bit weird if you look up to think about it. Maybe you don't have any like a background of Indonesian politics. What happened in Indonesia in October is very funny. You might want to think this way. You would imagine that, let's say let's take example of the US election, for example. You would imagine that Obama, the incumbent president, would like to support Hillary because Hillary Clinton is coming from the same Democratic Party. But what happened is that, Joko Widodo, the Obama, are actually lending the support to Donald Trump, which is coming from different parties. Not only that, he's also put his own son, Gibran Rakabumi, to run together as the running mates of Joko Widodo. So as if that Obama has a son and he asked the son and he put the son to run together with Donald Trump. That's not the end of the story. The thing is that it turned out that Gibran, the son, was actually still below the age limit. He was like 30 years old, but by regulation, you have to be 40 years old to be able to run for the vice presidency. So he went to the constitutional court to actually basically circumvent the regulation to make them Gibran Rakabumi to be able to run for vice presidency. This is really weird indeed. That's what I'm saying. This is kind of like alarming and running that Indonesia may be also on the verge of a very what I call the dynastic politics if Gibran will be elected. So that is the reason why maybe 2024 election in Indonesia is important. Let's move to another thing that probably more related on this forum, which is, if you look at the internet and social media usage in Indonesia, it's quite high, right? By 2022, sorry, this is still Bahasa Indonesia. On the left panel, you can see that the green one, 86% of the household has internet access. So 86% of Indonesian household has internet access. The red one, which is the numbers of the population or people who has the internet access, is 66%. So it's just quite high and also keep going up in the last 5 years significantly, right? On the right panel, you can see that 74% of the people who are using the internet that actually use that for the social media. So there's quite high penetration of internet and social media usage in Indonesia. And Indonesians really love social media, right? They were on the internet for 7 hours, 40 minutes every day, per day. And for the social media itself, they spend like 3 hours, 20 minutes on average per day. That's quite a lot of number if I come to think about it. I don't really recall that, but I think even in the US, the number is actually lower than this Indonesian time spending on the internet and social media. Now, the social media and digital technology in election, there are several issues here that might actually, have something to do with the social media and digital technology in the 2024 election. The first one is actually something called buzzers or cyber troop, which are individuals or groups that being paid to share online political propaganda using multiple and often fake social media accounts. This has become an essential tool for election campaign for all of the, running president's candidates and also to some extent parliament member as well, right? So cyber troop or the buzzers is really big thing in the internet, in the social media in Indonesia at the moment. It's actually not a completely new phenomenon. It's been started in 2012 during the governor elections. It was quite controversial because of the Ahok, which in the fight between Ahok and Anies Baswedan, the current running presidents on 2012 government election. So the first thing that you might observe from the election when it comes into social media is the use of buzzers as the political tools, political propaganda tools. The second one, which is also probably very interesting, there's actually, AI start to be used as the candidates, but mostly for the visual image manipulation. This is the AI generated pictures of Prabowo Subianto, the candidate number 2. But actually, if you look at about it, TV is actually still very important, right? 53% of Indonesians still get information from TV, while Facebook is like 24%, but the Instagram 19% and what Twitter is 7.2%. So the battle, the social media is actually on TikTok and Facebook. It's not in Twitter. It's not so much, probably also a bit also in Instagram. The last point that I pointed out is that what about the presidential candidate's vision on digital technology, right? If we take the cue from their official short vision, Prabowo, the candidate number 2, saw the words of digital economy as a part of national security agenda and technology as a human resource. Ganjar Pranowo, candidate number 3, pointing out the high-speed and affordable internet, right? And you look at also that, all candidates actually share the same concern on the digital economy. Digital economy is important, with some variation on its link with the small and medium enterprise, creative economy, and infrastructure. Anies Baswedan and Ganjar, candidate number 1 and 3, also seem to open possibility to revise the controversial, law, electronic information and transaction is oftentimes used to silence the political opposition. So this is the political candidate's vision on technology. But in my opinion, there's no strong, credible signals that this thing will be done once they are elected as the presidents in the future. So this is pretty much still on the vision, and there's no credible signals that gonna do. We are sure they're gonna do what they said during the campaign, right? So this is what I just mentioned earlier. This is the sort of like the vision: digital economy, high-speed affordable internet, digital economy, and law of the electronic information and transaction. Again, no credible signals. I think that is pretty much what I would like to say. Maybe Justin will actually be able to tell you about the more technical things that we actually did here in Leiden. Thank you.
I will keep it really quick, guys. So I should stand here. So yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm really happy to see familiar faces and cameras there. And I've been working with Rizal and also other people at the Leiden Human Lab for a few months now, working really on this data set, open access and multimodal data set for the Indonesian election. Do I click this one? Cool. So just to recap why we want to do this, first of all, we want to preserve the data because we know that from the previous elections, the data are gone. We don't have it anymore, except for one person who's Cowpers from National University of Singapore. But then they still have like quite a limited information. It's only the education, religion, occupation, and their platform statements. And I will show you what we have on top of what he provided. And also we want to offer more diverse data set in comparison to the existing ones, because usually they only have like text data about this person, where they're from, how old they are, blah, blah. But then we also provide the images of these candidates, because we believe that not only text can provide useful information about how they present themselves, but images do that as well. So we can show you this later. Yeah. So how do we collect data? I think my classmates have seen me struggling with this for a really, really long time. I'm just, working on my computer. But basically, this is scrape data from the KPU website, which is the election committee. We have the basic people. These people are the ones that didn't publicize their profile, but we still see that they have the party name, which electoral district it is, the candidate number, the gender, the name, and then the residence, and then the image as well. So we have these data, and also when you click into the profile, you see more data. So what have we observed so far? We have 300,000 candidates, as Rizal mentioned. 80% of the candidates were willing to publish their data, and I can show you how detailed they are, because it's kind of like horrifying. If I'm a candidate, I wouldn't want to do that. But then we see a lot of patterns of copying and pasting. For example, if I'm from party A, I will basically copy, maybe there's a template, and they just copy it, and then we see a lot of duplicates from these people. And so far, we have annotated 200 random statements on the national level candidates, and then we annotated basically this. I'm so sorry because there are some mistakes here, but I can explain on the left. This is the most salient topic when they talked about in the platform statement. They talk a lot about social concerns, for example, welfare and all those kind of things. And the second is economy. And something that's so interesting is that religion is still really low in this regard. And then this one, the second most salient topic, we see that economy is really salient, but when you compare it like social, it's not that far off from each other actually. So for example, a lot of people talk about social as the most salient, and the second thing they would talk about economy or the other way around. And there's still some religion here, but it's not as much as we would have expected. So this is the data we offer. Party, blah, blah, we know all that. We have this, starting from here, these are really interesting things. For example, the marriage status, their children, their partners, and their names, how old they are, their disabilities, the occupation companies, their current occupation, and their past occupation when they worked there, and then what their positions were. What kind of societies they participated in the past and now, their address, full address, for example, first St. Giles, and you would know. And then you also have the legal status of corruption. This is actually super interesting because it is still quite an issue in Indonesia about corruption. But then they still have a question asking, hey, have you done corruption before? And they're like, no. We still have education. We know that extracurricular courses, award platform statements, and profile pictures. So this is what we have if we download the data from a data set. We have some sample for example, on the left, it's national level. You see Dapil's electoral districts, and then you have the party candidate numbers, and you have a few like this image. We have the link to the image, but also we have saved it to a server. So we have the data forever, kind of, if we don't think about GDPR. We also have all these kind of stuff. These are basically the things that I also mentioned before. But for example, if people have more than one type of education, then of course they will have more data. And sometimes they don't have some data on certain things, and it's normal. And then there are quite a lot of missing data, but that's fine because we still see a lot of interesting things. And this is what I was talking about. So a lot of copying and pasting, it's totally the same, but they're different people. So this is an interesting phenomenon that we want to investigate in the future. Sample image data look really illegal. I have that on my computer, but I also have that on the server. So when I was like testing my scraper, I'm like, this feels like criminal. It's not, because as allowed by the ethics committee. I hope. So the current progress, we're almost done with all the candidates. We still have a little bit left to scrape. We have a week to go. We suspect that the data set and the website is gonna disappear after the election. And we're gonna prepare the data set for open access. And then we're also gonna curate some specific data sets for example, network analysis on names and occupations, educations, if they went to the same university, if they worked at a certain companies. And we try to also fuse data with like social media accounts and different information that we can get from them online. And we're gonna do more annotation on these platforms. We are, experts on that, including Rizal, annotating these three things. So this is all. Thank you. I hope that was quick enough.
So thank you so much for Lucinia for hosting this panel, and also thanks for Rizal and Justin for giving us a broader picture of the election and also a potential social data science approach to help you better observe and then capture the hidden links and power dimensions among thousands of candidates, both on the national level and also like often ignored on the local, regional, and provincial level. And also a lot of space for research ethics that I'm sure I would like to talk about in the class and all. So I guess my perspective to the panel discussion would be more zooming in on the so-called digital public sphere and also the issue of content moderation and how that relates to election integrity. And to do so, my case study would be the platform in TikTok, which is like arguably the most prominent one in Indonesia. And what makes TikTok and Indonesia so different, as Rizal has briefly touched upon, Indonesia is a so-called nicknamed social media nation. It has a mobile-first industry. So over 60% of the total population actually are social media user, and most of them access those digital applications through mobile devices. And also more importantly, it has a young and quickly urbanizing population. And according to the General Elections Commission's data, over 50% of the eligible voters are actually those Gen Z or like the tech-savvy millennials. And also was about over 100 million monthly active users. Indonesia is the second largest global market of TikTok. And for TikTok, the platform which many of you might be on, it's a platform that heavily engage on content engagement versus like Facebook and Instagram, emphasize social engagement. It's mimetic, it's multimodal, so you don't really see like purely text-based data. You see captions, sound, images, and also the political economy of this platform is, as a made in China platform compared with the others, makes the approach of the platform and how they deal with the local governments supposedly different compared with the other ones. So like, of course, TikTok has become a key battleground in this election. It's now like heavily used and sometimes weaponized for political campaigning. On the left side, you see one of the presidential candidate, Anies Baswedan, started doing TikTok live maybe like later last year, and also communicating with the TikTok children quoted. And also here on the right-hand side, we see reports saying how candidates are dancing to victory. They're trying to mimic the trendy dances and the challenges on TikTok and trying to appeal to the youth. And here you actually see on Twitter, Anies has his own fan base and named him after, give me my K-pop tradition name, Park Anies. And you can actually buy the light sticks on the Shopee, the platform, as a way of supporting your candidates. But also, this is a user-generated platform, and there's way more important public discourse than purely political campaigning. So we also see harmful misinformation and hate speech happening as we approach the election, as reported by The Guardian, the recent hate campaign against the Rohingya refugees on the northwest part of Indonesia. So content moderation is needed for a good reason in order to achieve the election integrity, and it does not involve only those platforms and mostly global platforms, because if you remember the chart, most of those social media platforms Indonesians are using are not Indonesian native. So it's global platform, and here we have the local governments and also a lot of like specialized election supervisory bodies. We have civil societies, which is super prominent in the Indonesian context. We'll talk about later. We have online advertisers, be it professional party advertisers or like commercial advertisers backing those candidates. And also in the end, we have the creators and users. So for my own PhD research, I'm basically approach the issue from two parts. One is a law and policy perspective. So I'm happy to talk more about legislations and also doing expert interviews with people from the law enforcement body, the content moderators in these platforms or the contractors, and also the fact checkers in Indonesia. And for part two, I'm trying to do a bottom-up approach and talk about how the content creators and Indonesian users are perceiving the legitimacy of those content moderation. So maybe I'll just quickly share some insights related to like particularly election related, and it's mostly qualitative. So here you can see a screenshot of TikTok's moderation related to election integrity, and most of the platforms have a designated election integrity page. TikTok has a policy of banning any types of political advertising, which includes traditional paid ads, and also the creators who like receive compensation to do branded content. And political buzzer is a big issue and kind of uniquely caught in Indonesia, as you can see back to the 2014 and 2019 election. So this is not allowed on TikTok and so as YouTube. And also the priority would be political misinformation. So as a platform frame themselves, they try to be a lighthearted, a home for entertainment, but not politics. So if you want political news, if you want breaking news, don't go to our platform. And if you want any types of moderation issue related to politics, don't go to our platform. So it's kind of a positionality of the platform in this types of controversial topic. But on the other hand, Facebook still allows political advertising. So I just quickly searched before this session. This is the official campaign period of the election starts from the end of November and will last until February 10th, several days ahead of the polls. And during the past 19 days, we see there's certain types of transparency, which you can see the pages of Facebook and how much money they have been investing into political campaigning. Leading the amount of spent money would be the Democratic Party. And then you see Prabowo, which is the presidential candidate, and different party. So if I remember correctly, back to the 2019 election, the Facebook advertisements report was not yet available in the last election. So for me, it's kind of an improvement, a move to a transparency of election integrity. This is, of course, data from the platform, but at least we got to see how much each parties are spending on political advertising. So a quick system or snapshot of how platforms are establishing a visibility regime. Mostly people would think they only remove account, but if you go to the election integrity page and also see the community guideline, the take it or leave it binary discussion is no longer. Mostly they reduce the visibility of certain content, they geo block it, or they don't recommend that in the search results, or they downgrade that in the comments section for different reasons. And for certain content which the platform deems has certain educational purpose, they would choose to leave it. But mostly the reduction of visibility or restriction applies to content that's borderline, which is not technically illegal, but across the line of being illegal. And in the Indonesian context, there's often a certain area at the intersection of religious, racial, ethnic, and intergroup issues called SARA, and it has been attacked a lot and used in the identity politics of Indonesia. The case of Ahok, the former Jakarta governor, was attacked because he was a ethnically Chinese Christian. So the identity politics played a huge role in the public discourse. And that's also a major issue under the oversee of the election supervisory body. So Bawaslu, which is the election supervisory body in Indonesia, has crime sentence over certain types of posts and speech that's targeting the SARA groups and issues in Indonesia. So in the end, the major highlights or the challenges based on the expert I've been talking to in terms of moderating those borderline content, especially during election period. The first is one interviewee say, the approach used by those election monitoring body is not answering the challenges. The challenges being the campaign period is only it's very hard to identify certain types of accounts being political accounts, or it's just people expressing their political opinion. So there is a normative kind of dilemma or distinction between political misinformation and political opinion. And also, one of the interviewees mentioned the election body is not having a good regulation token, in the sense that Bawaslu monitoring body has direct channels with platforms, but there's non-binding. So there is a power struggle between the different governmental institutions, being the law enforcement body of Indonesia is the Ministry of Communication and Information. But all the requests of the taken down has to, from the other governmental bodies, have to go through the Cominfo. So this creates a certain types of power struggle, and also sometimes different stakeholders define the content, the certain types of borderline content differently. So the case in the 2019 general election is that the Bawaslu received several reports, and then they sit down to the platforms and say, we sent you like over 5,000 reports, but only 43 of them were taken down because the platform is saying this is not violating our community guideline. This might be violating the local laws, but not the platform rules. But luckily there is still hope. So one of the major development or like milestone I would like to mention is a joint commitment amount signed by like the 20 election party major parties joining the election, the presidency candidate campaigning team, and also 4 or 5 major global social media platforms in Indonesia and certain civil society coalition. They signed a joint commitment for this 2024 election with certain priorities to fight disinformation, protect children, ensure transparency of political advertising, and in the end, guarantee access to platform data for independent research and monitoring. So for me, this is also a huge improvement, and happy to talk about how the multi-stakeholderism can play out in the Indonesian context. So that's all for me. Thanks.
Thanks for these insights. So people online in the room, maybe come up with your questions while I ask maybe a very quick question to the panel. So maybe can each of you give me an example of what we should watch out for in the final days of the election campaign or after the votes have been casted?
Should I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
From my perspective, I think one of the most important things is to see if the website crashed.
Yeah.
I think that is really actually important, because in my experience, it crashed a lot, which means it actually can't take a lot of capacity when it maintains the traffic flow on the website.
It's a KPU website.
Yeah, actually, so it's not that I got blocked. It's just the website's not responding all the time. So I think it is important to kind of be aware of this digital architecture infrastructure, how we can improve them in the future for consistency and also for transparency. Because if you have such a weak infrastructure for the voters, they would feel like, yeah, this is actually not that great, even if you have that online. So I think that is quite important.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's more because it's very likely, according to certain media reports, that we might enter into the second round, a round of period, which we will have another round of voting in June. So my understanding is the whole temperature and landscape would change a lot after the first, if we enter into the second round of voting. And I would be more curious to see how would they change their narratives, and how would they actually kind of bond with each other, become coalition, and how the political communication strategies would be used differently by the current candidacy, the presidential candidates, I mean.
And for you, Rizal, one quick thing to watch out for over the past weeks, over the next few weeks.
Well, let's see who's going to win the election. That's probably the only interesting to look up as well. So I think, but the numbers actually shows already. The next question will be like, is it gonna be like one round of election, or should actually go another round on June? If it's gonna be going for the second round of election, then we're gonna see all of those, a lot of activities again in the social media. That will be also interesting to see as well.
Great, thank you. So I'll open the floor for questions. If anyone wants to go first. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the super interesting speeches. I was wondering, there's obviously with the kind of prominence of social media in Indonesia, the one aspect of it is this risk for misinformation and kind of political malpractice. And there's also the other side, which is empowering civil society and actually, because for example, I see that a lot of the candidates cater towards the conservative population, and the headline for one of the articles was about like liberalism on the decline. So I wonder if there's evidence of the flip side of actually social media and Indonesia being used by like youth movements and more liberal movements to counteract this more conservative push.
Yeah, I think I might go first for this question. Exactly, like the civil society organizations first is super prominent. There's actually a civil society coalition. They have direct relationships and communications with either the platforms and the government to make sure that there's not a purely top-down decision-making process when it comes to moderation, but just in terms of how the platforms are being used in people's everyday life. And of course, we've been seeing like the election campaign itself has been more fun because of those platforms. The candidates are using different ways of like whether or not it's making themselves like cute, being more cuter and dancing. And also there's a lot of grassroots campaigning, actually voting or like gaining support for the candidates. So I would say for like Indonesia, it's such a scattered and like geographically scattered region. Though TV is still the major information consumption source, those social media platforms definitely reach a lot of rural area and grassroots groups for them to actually have a say in this election period. So that's my observation.
Let me take a question from online. So someone asks, one question to Justin and Rizal Shadiq, in addition to annotating candidate statements copied from party platforms that tend to be normative, is there also an opportunity to add data on candidates' position on several key bills and issues, for instance, capital city relocation, sexual violence law, etc.?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, for sure.
We would love to, but I don't think we can get that directly from the profile. The thing is that the idea is that we would like to see two things, whether the politician connection and the identity wield her or his electability. And the way we're actually trying to draw the connection is actually looking at the, some sort of connection from the CV, and maybe also, if it is possible later, from the social media connection. The second one is on the identity. The identity, we're actually trying to get some ideas from the profile. I know it's normative, but the idea is sort of like we assume this is the place where the candidate would like to actually send the signals about her or his own identity. Now, part of the job is actually trying to figure it out. What do we mean by what is the relevant identity? So maybe some things about the level of the Islamic conservativeness, and also maybe the positions on the nationalism, national unity, or some things like that. We actually exploring the idea when we're collecting the pictures of the candidate, because we somehow probably it's possible to get some idea what sort of like identity they would like to portray. For example, maybe one of the candidates actually using the hijab, right? But there are several type of hijab. You might want if you want to be portrayed to be seen as conservative, you have a different type of hijab. If you want to be like, you know, more moderate Islam, then going to be a different type of. So that kind of thing. So that is a part of the job that we would like to do. We would like to have those things, the position on the key issue and the you know, position on sexual violence and also the funding sources as well. But at the moment, it's not possible. But our data set, one, there's some data on that, we can easily link that to the data set.
Yes, please.
Just first, thank you, everybody. This has been super useful. In terms, and perhaps I missed it, but where are you scraping the data from? Is it just from party pages? If you're not, do you intend to take data from the Election Commission's website through the elections and after? And then third, where are you going to host it, or who will it be available to?
Yeah, so first of all, we scraped all the data from the KPU website, which is the election committee website. They have a bunch of you know, data repository where you can find those candidates, information about them. Like, as you can see from the picture that I showed, you can have, for example, Aceh 1, that is a Dapil, and you go there, and then there will be a bunch of candidates. And then we were scraping information from there. Some people didn't publicize their data. It's totally fine. Some of them we did. So, and going forward, now the data it's on a server at Leiden University. We believe that we want to make it open access because it is really important. I think one of the main goal of this data set is to really make research on Indonesian elections more accessible to everyone. So it's not only, we're not only going to create one data set of a bunch of random, you know, dictionaries nested in a data frame. I don't want to do that. We also want to create something that's useful for people who can actually grab these resources and directly do analyses on them. And where to host them, this is a good question because of, you know, ethics and data privacy, but we believe that we're gonna upload it to a public data set, a public website where the university allowed us to in the Netherlands.
Right at the back of the room.
Thank you for the talk. It's really, really useful. We kind of all sort of touched a little bit on political buzzwords a little bit, and I'm wondering if we can just talk more on that. And kind of maybe put in a comparative perspective with other countries where WhatsApp, it seemed like it's paying people to post things on WhatsApp groups. And I guess I'm just thinking about Brazil, India, other countries where kind of group chats become a really important form of political communication. And I guess I'm wondering if you can just compare. So there's two parts to that. One is just more on them, and second is kind of seeing comparison.
Comparison about political communications, or is it?
You said like political buzzers.
Oh, okay, yeah. So,
Whoever wants to take it.
Okay. So I think the buzzers, as we mentioned, and also like basically starts from the 2012 Jakarta city election, and in Indonesia is mainly not like easily identifiable political influencers, and sometimes they trying to become like a commentators, and they will set up their own account and name themselves Voice of Jakarta, and it's actually like easily doing so. And we've been seeing a lot of accounts actually happening online, and they frame themselves as like a news anchor and trying to do like political or like objective content, and they're trying to do, as some of my interviewee mentioned, like the spicy facts, the hot takes, and which people like gossip, and they would like to know what's happening behind the scene. So I would say that would be one of the new strategies happening in the previous election we've been seeing. But in terms of the buzzing and misinformation in this election, one interesting finding I've been feeling is perhaps because the buzzing situation has been like super prominent in the past several elections, and some interviewees and Indonesian users I've been talking to have been mentioned they felt like the impact of misinformation has decreasing in this year's election, and more people are talking more about the gimmicking and like the candidates themselves, social media campaigning. how Annies are related to K-pop fans, and gossip for like the culture aspect of that. So I don't really have any empirical evidence in terms of how buzzing has been manifested in this election. I do feel like because there are certain forces have been, or attention has been put into this issue, and all the platforms have been either banning like paid political advertisement from influencer level. I do see there seems to be another trend coming up for this year's election. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Rizal maybe have more to add.
I don't hear the question well, so I think you've already answered. I think most of the buzzer is now becoming industry really. I think I know some people are actually working on it and see like whether comparing with Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, is it gonna be like more like a big businesses, or is it gonna be more fragmented in terms of what type of the industrial organization of the buzzer industry? I think it's actually very much but again, the problem is that this is a kind of like not easily observed phenomenon, right? The buzzers themselves. Nobody want to be seen as buzzers by nature. So yeah, it started 2012. It's becoming very important political tools at the moment.
Thank you.
There's a question online for DV about deepfakes, which I'm sure is interesting to many in the room. So the question goes, there's been concerns over the use of deepfake by one of the political parties for campaigning purposes. How do you think it would affect the effectiveness of content moderation?
Yeah, I think most of the platforms have been having the certain section in terms of using the generative AI in politically altered content, and it has been seen in all the campaigning, not just in Indonesia, but I'm pretty sure recent use in the US and the recent recent judgments from the Facebook Oversight Board. And it's being used a lot also in the Indonesia context, but maybe not as frequently as what we've been seeing in the other country context. So my feeling, and also based on some interviewees I've been talking to, is deepfake is not as frequently used in the Indonesian users or political campaigning as a campaigning strategy in the Indonesian context as the others. I think most of them would go with more like on the ground strategies instead of going with the technical part in terms of persuading people. Yeah.
We have time for one super quick question from the room, if anyone wants to.
I have a question to Rizal. Okay, don't you think that the polling system, it also could be done to navigate or to make a social engineering to the people, and it could be technically biased. For example, like a graph you reviewed before, number 2 have 46, for example, and how if they just take the sample in the region of the basis of Gerindra party, for example, and it's read out as on the national level. So what you tell me?
There is always possibly always, but I don't see any. So here's the thing: if you look at the average of the 10 or maybe more of these polling surveyors, they come up with more or less the same number. The figure that you see in the economy is actually average of the 9 polling results. It actually goes into more or less the same numbers. About the bias and certain like I think there are some reputable pollsters, surveyors that actually you can rely on their data. But there are some surveyors that are actually not really good when it comes into methodology as well. Yes, but I'm not really that pessimistic with the bias of the surveys. At least you can always sort of like checking it out, and I'm not really that again pessimistic in reading the numbers as well.
Great. thank you very much for your questions, and thank you very much to the panel for these interesting insights. Thanks for coming, and please stay tuned for the upcoming blog posts and the event by the Elections Initiative here at the Internet Institute. Thank you.